I'm a fan of fantasy, so I listen to Easy and Alan on their Just a Fantasy Fan podcast. Now here's Easy and Chris Allen.
And welcome back to another show where we're going to get right to it tonight. Too many people are complaining we talk too much NASCAR. So we're going to get, even though tonight,
I'll say, although tonight might be the time to talk about NASCAR.
Tonight might be the time. I've been watching the race. I mean, it's the first NASCAR race I've ever watched without any Confederate flags.
Right.
I've watched a lot of races. So now we'll get in trouble for talking non-football, but I think it's pretty easy to ban the flag on a day where there's no fans in the stands. I mean, obviously you're not going to get a whole lot of throwback at these.
People
okay, on Twitter, but not in the stands. Meaning,
sure.
It was a lot easier to take the grief on Twitter today or tonight than it is taking that grief with actual people in the stands. I think you'd have seen fights if they'd have done this 2 hours before a race where there were fans in the stands.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have seen some uproar. Instead, we're just seeing uproar on Twitter. Oh, I went on and read some. There's obviously some racist people out there on Twitter. There's
a few.
I understand. Can you appreciate the Confederate flag and not be a racist, or is it impossible? Okay.
To me, it's impossible.
Okay. I don't have any. I'm not sure I've ever owned one. I don't know. I've been born. I was raised in the 60s. So I think Confederate flags were even more popular in the 60s than they are probably today.
Yeah.
I've never owned one. I guess that's one of those things where people might say they aren't, but they feel that's a freedom they have, or they feel that flag is part of their history, so they can do it. But back to what we're, starting to learn, just you have to consider other people's feelings a little bit. Don't take your flag to the race. That's all they're asking. They're not saying you can't hang it up above your bed if that's where you need to have it.
Hey, if that's what you want to do,
right. But at the same time, don't put it on your trailer and come, to the races. That's all.
Right.
So, and then Bubba Wallace, the driver in NASCAR that's representing a whole race, the poor guy. He's been on a lot of shows. He's been on a lot of things. He speaks very well. And everything he says, I'm on board. They put a lot of pressure on him. And he had issues after the race last week. A lot of heat exhaustion. Now he's not blaming much. He's saying maybe mentally it got to him a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The stress of carrying a sport, like that. But hey, I'm all about having the best people there, regardless. So
yeah,
But yes, I have been watching, and so far, no problems in the stands. So.
Good.
I think next week there'll actually be fans in the stands for a NASCAR race for the first time since the pandemic. But at the same time, I think it's just 5,000 military people from the base that's close to the track next week. So it's not really open to the public. Let's
gotcha.
Say. So
okay.
All right. So there, I was going to change. We're going to get right into football, and we obviously didn't. But
it was poignant. Let me talk about NASCAR tonight.
It is because I know people don't consider it a sport, some people, but when it comes money wise, it's still one of the top 10 sports.
I do not.
It is they used to not be athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them now are athletes as far as athletic, physically fit. There's not a whole lot of fat old men racing cars anymore. It's, I think it's harder to drive 500 miles in a circle than you'd think. Now, I think your argument would be, what's a sport, what's a game, what's a competition? I think those are the three that people argue all the time. But hey, it's something to watch on TV where there's a winner and money and a trophy at the end. I'm willing to watch.
That's fine.
All right. Let's get into it. We're going to try. People keep telling me they just want to hear more Chris, less me. So that means we have to get into football because, that's just, where you bring it all. The big news this week for football or fantasy, let's say, really, because there was hardly any news, is Dalvin Cook coming out now. Another running back that's, going to hold out, doesn't want to play another down until he gets paid. Do running backs need to have a different pay structure? Because it does seem like teams are taking advantage of those first 4 years, which are their most, they're the 4 years that seem to be the best years you're going to get out of a running back, and then just dumping these players. So the running back money's not going to be there a lot of times for that next contract. So is this a problem that can be fixed with money? Is it a problem that'll get fixed just when the marketplace establishes it? And that's running backs will just have to learn to be tight ends or wide receivers or in college, or, how do we fix this problem? Because a lot of people say the running backs are the most athletic, the most physical player on the field. The problem is there's so many. We've had a talk before. There's so many of them that they're interchangeable, and they're not, their value's down because there are so many of them out there. What do you think how do we solve this problem with running back value and them getting paid?
There's really, that is a whole other issue, but I think that the problem is the way that rookie contracts are structured. It's that basically, unless you're even if you're at the top of the food chain, like you get drafted in the first round, like your Zeke Elliott's, like your Saquon Barkley's, right, so on and so forth, where you have the draft capital, you wind up getting paid a decent amount as compared to most rookies. But even still, once you get into your third and fourth season, when it comes up for renegotiation time, you probably have at least 600, 700, 800 carries under your belt. Like, at least that's just carries. We're not even talking about targets.
Right.
So at more or less, you're in layman's terms, you're used up, or at least you're looked upon as the league is being used up. And unless there's a way that they can restructure the rookie contracts such that, like, for running backs in particular, it makes it so that their payment up front is, I guess, more equitable based off of their work, then it's going to be very hard in order for running backs in particular to get paid more. But the problem with that is that, so even let's say if they get more work, does that really determine their value within the league? Because a lot of people have, like, data has shown, and a lot of great analysts have already shown, that even if you give a guy 200-300 touches, you could wind up finding a guy in the 5th, 6th, and 7th round that can output that same amount when you need it, that can help account for just as many wins.
Right.
So it's really not about how many touches that they have, but it's just that when it comes to guaranteed, or I guess projected volume, the person with the higher draft capital tends to win out in those cases. So it's a very hard nut to crack. And I think a lot of teams are just as comfortable to say, well, unless you put out something like Christian McCaffrey, his past season, unless you put out production like Todd Gurley 2-3 seasons ago. I mean, unless you're one of those top backs in the league.
Even that contract came back to be a bad thing for.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they at least got signed. Now they don't normally, they got paid, but they didn't even really live out like most of those contracts.
Right.
And that's the other part of the issue, is that even if you get that second contract and all the hype and fanfare that goes on, it's not guaranteed. Yeah. That's the other problem. So, like, running back is such a hard nut to crack, where I don't think it's going to be solved in just making sure that the rookies get paid, because even if you could have running back veterans that can last until they're 27, 28. We've got Mark Ingram, that's he's 30, 31. We got Frank Gore, that's literally my age. He's 3 months older than I am, still playing in the league. So it's just that range.
But
in your utility,
that's not common. That's
right.
The problem.
That's not common,
because not only are there a lot of good running backs in college and in the pros. And that's the thing. The difference, sure, there's 2 or 3 really great. Then the next group is huge. That's the point. But
there's just a whole lot of RB2s that fall after, because it's basically it's Zeke, it's Saquon, it's Alvin Kamara, it's Christian McCaffrey, and then basically it's just like everybody else.
Yeah.
It's Joe Mixon, it's Derrick Henry, it's Joe, all the Derrick Henry.
Some of the ones we name after their first 4 or 5 years, they fall off that real quick. So the other problem is it's not the fact that there's just a bunch of them out there. The other problem is they're also they're in the most physical spot. They get hit the most. There's the most contact. So they're the most likely to, again, to wear down in those 3 or 4 years, meaning truly their career is over before that first real contract. And that's why these guys are sitting out.
Well, yeah. And it's not just, it can be their age or health. It could also be whether or not the offensive line is working like for or against them. It could be bad quarterback play that puts him in like bad down and distance situation that keeps their production down, or or even their chance to score touchdowns. Keeps that reduced. Right. So there's just a lot of variables that can play into a quarterback doing great or poorly. That like up and down variation year over year. It's hard for any GM or anybody in an authoritative position to say, well, is your production because of you, or is your production because of all the other folks around you? And unless a guy like Christian McCaffrey stands out, where he's not only rushing for a ton, but also receiving a ton,
and we still don't know if his contract, right? We still don't even know if his contract works out either,
right? Yeah.
Because the argument still would be is he's had 2 really good seasons, and that's still all he's had.
And who's to say after this season, because now they don't have Cam, they've got Teddy, their defense isn't all that great. So now they're really going to have to lean on him.
And they didn't have to give him the contract yet either. He could still be playing under his rookie contract. So I don't know. It obviously it screws fantasy up a lot, because now. We have Dalvin Cook, who's, obviously a first round type player. We have Joe Mixon, who I'm hearing less about now. So I don't know if his thing was just to throw it out there and see what happens. But,
it could be.
Yeah, my argument, if you aren't paying attention to the history of the Bengals, he's wasting his breath.
Oh, yeah. So he's either going to get paid or he's not. And
he's not going to. Well, he's either going to play or he's not. It's either way. Right. So, maybe somebody talked to him and and he made that thought, but I don't know. So it would be hard to crack. I guess quickly earlier today, which maybe I'm getting more into it now. I did listen to more podcasts and more football shows in the last couple days. Yeah, I'm starting to. Well, we're what, about 100 days out if everything starts on time. So we're definitely getting close to the season. So I got to start. Our league picked for draft spots last night. So, obviously now I can start, mock draft, and I'm picking 12th. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Okay.
But I guess my quick thought would be, could this problem be solved if we, let's say the salary cap for the team, if we did something like, okay, the running back's salary or 50% of the running back salary won't count. Meaning, is there a way we can do something, unique for running backs only, or is the Players Association going to say, well, no, we just can't, you can't do that? I mean, is that something that can be done either way? Part of me would say, okay, if you say, all right, half your salary cap, boom, you can pay your running back, $80 million and only 40 million goes to the cap. If that's what you want to do, that type thing. Would something like that help? Or is this just one of those things that it's going to take more than something simple?
It's going to take way more than something simple, because the moment that you start throwing or allowing more, or I guess dictating that more money get thrown at a certain position, then that changes the whole structure of the league. Then teams and players will try and find their own ways to exploit it. I mean, just the way that teams are now exploiting rookie contracts as it is right now.
Right. Who's a running back? Who's not? Is Lamar Jackson a running back?
Right. Start switching classifications. Like, hey, Lamar, just wear this jersey real quick. Like, why does it say 50?
Yeah. What's that for?
Yeah.
I don't know. It just seems like these guys deserve more for what punishment they take. And like I said, the fact that they just don't last more than 4 or 5 years by far on average. That's
right.
Running. I think a running back's career is like less than 2 years on average. And I know that counts a whole lot of guys, but there's not a whole lot of
26, 27 is about like the nominal, like where you start to see the most of them like fall out. 25, 26 is where you start to see the decline. 26, 27, 28, that's where you expect them to fall off. If they make it to 30, I mean, who knows what to expect. And then there's Frank Gore.
Yeah, and then there's Frank Gore. All right, I think the only other news is Todd Gurley passes a physical finally.
Woohoo!
I don't know how big a news that is. Are you excited for him? Do you think this is still an injury issue, or was this a Rams issue?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
I mean, when it comes to injuries like that, I try and keep as much or take in as much information as I possibly can. And based off of what we were hearing out of the Rams camp and how he was, how his touches were managed like throughout most of the season, it does seem like there's a decent amount of that lingering like arthritis that's there. And I don't think it's going to get to the point where it flares up and he sits out multiple games, but could they wind up holding him back for a few snaps like here and there and just making sure that he's capable of carrying the load should they get into playoff contention, even though the NFC South is one of the more loaded divisions in the NFC. But I guess for me right now, if I'm looking at it from just a strictly fantasy perspective, I mean, the fantasy season only goes to week 15, 16, like somewhere in there. I don't mind Todd Gurley like at his ADP. I think there's enough there.
So you're saying he's a good late second round pick or a bad late second round pick and a really good early third round pick?
Good third round pick. I don't mind him at ADP because I think at least for the most part, the Falcons have shown, at least from first off, that they had one of the highest neutral passing rates in the league the past like 2 or 3 seasons with Dan Quinn and Matt Ryan. On top of that, like when we saw, not only did Devonta Freeman make his heyday like as being a good rusher, and I think Todd Gurley's still a good rusher, but he's also, but they also capable of dumping down the ball to Devonta Freeman as well, and Todd Gurley has that within him. So it's just like Todd Gurley carries enough of a special skill set that he still should be able to create or produce enough on the touches that he's given. And the Falcons have just enough of advantageous situation that he should be able to.
He might only be a 1,100 yards, 1,200 yard guy, but he also this year could get 16 touchdowns. I mean, which would give him pretty good. I'd give him second round value easily.
How is 14 and 15 touches not in the range of outcomes for him? 8 to 9 carries with 4, 5, 6 targets.
Right. Oh, I agree. That's probably right there. And I do think on the goal line area, within the 5, he's going to get the ball.
Right.
Because we know Julio Jones doesn't want the ball down there. He does not like scoring touchdowns. So doing quick mock drafts today, very quickly picking 12th. If you want to go running back, you definitely have to think. Going 12 and 13 on the turn, you can get 2 really, really big name wide receivers. That's not a problem whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the problem is you go a long way before you really drop way down before you get a running back at all now, and they really fall off. But the problem is, at that 12, 13 spot, I call them all question mark running backs. Eckler, Chubb, Drake, Jacobs. And then even down the line, even further, which I think they're even past that, is, Fournette and Gurley. Those are, when you look at all those real quickly, I don't see one of them that I would go, well, okay, I'll take him at 12 or 13 because he could have a top 3 running back year. I know a lot of people think that on Kenyon Drake right now, but I don't know. Arizona still hasn't proven to me their offense wasn't that good last year. They haven't proven to me that they're going to score a lot of touchdowns, that Drake's going to have. I don't think in my mind yet, I can't picture Drake in the top 3 at the end of the fantasy season. Is there any of those that you could see that I named? You would go, okay, that could be a top 3 running back when it's all over.
Drake, for me,
think?
I still think even without the
a lot of people think that. I'm just not there because you know me, I like to see it once.
I mean, what was it? So I mean, for the back end of the season, when did Drake get traded to them? What was that, like week 9?
I would have said 8, but it could have been. It was in that area.
Yeah, so something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, but he was an absolute monster, like down the final stretch. So what was it? So it's week 15, 22, 137, 4 touchdowns. Week 16, 24, 166, 2 touchdowns. I mean, like,
all right.
I'm saying I saw enough, like on the back, like towards the back half of the season, after he had time to establish himself. He was their running back 1 at that point.
And here's the argument I've given you now for this will be our 4th season. I'll throw it out there again. Things that happen in the middle of the season, or running backs that come into a game that haven't started 4 or 5 games, defensive coordinators aren't prepared. They haven't watched tape. They haven't thought anything. And that still is something I think about. Yes. Kenyon Drake
that was week 15.
Okay.
Not week 9.
Okay. But we've had this discussion. These defensive coordinators, they're planning all year round to do something. They just can't start. They can't throw some new game plan out in week 15 that they haven't tried all year, meaning they still have a set or a base defense that they're playing off of. And yes, they will hone it for one player or another, but they're not doing big changes for some running back that they watch no tape on, no nothing. And still, a lot of people thought was just Kenyon Drake, that there wasn't anything there. So I don't think even in week 15, a defensive coordinator was going, oh, we got to stop this guy. I'm just saying, that's my opinion, that I haven't seen it yet. So it worries me. My point is, I've seen Todd Gurley do it.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. It's Todd Gurley. It's only 2 years later. What he did it right. He did it 3 years ago, right? 3 seasons ago was his big thing. So, I've seen Leonard Fournette do it, and yes, he has a different offense. Maybe he's got a little more competition, but I have seen him do it. I still haven't seen Kenyon Drake do it where the other teams and defensive coordinators know he's going to be there. So it just worries me.
Man.
I know a lot of you and that's why this show's fun. I get to give you a fan of my opinion as a fan. All the experts are saying the same thing. Kenyon Drake, a lot of people are putting their marbles in his bag. But it's still Arizona.
What's wrong with Arizona?
They're Arizona. They haven't proven anything in the last 4 or 5 years. So I don't know. I can't disagree that out of the list I gave you, he isn't the one, but all of them scare me. Where at the end of round 1, now Joe Mixon's going a little above them. Does Joe Mixon have a shot at being a top 3 as long as he doesn't sit out? That's my problem with him. If he doesn't sit out, why not? Does he have a chance to be a top 3 running back in this new offense or new quarterback?
Why not? I mean, defense, like while they've made some investments in their defense, I mean, they're mostly young investments, so they could have a poor defense again in 2020, lead to a lot of negative game scripts. They've got a rookie quarterback. Offensive line should be a little bit better this year now that we've got Jonah Williams back. So essentially we get 2 first-round picks to boost that offensive line.
But do you want to pick a first-round guy that might – I mean, hopefully we'll know by then if he's going to actually sit out. But
yeah, all things being equal, like if we knew that he wasn't going to sit out, or even let's say he doesn't sit out and he winds up catching that new contract that he's hoping he'll get, then sure, why not? That's within his range of outcomes.
So if I'm sitting at 12 and 13 and it fell just right, would you have a problem starting your draft with, let's say, Joe Mixon and Aaron Jones, both guys that are being taken late in round 1? So if you got both of them at 12 and 13, do you like Aaron Jones? Is he a guy, if things go right, or Aaron Rodgers is still on the down slope? do you like him over Drake or Drake? Eckler is also in that area. Eckler, I'm still not. Eckler, my problem is just so much has changed there.
Yeah. I think my problem with Aaron Jones is the fact that he made his hay off of a lot of borrowed time last season with Jamal Williams being hurt, and then he was able to capitalize on a ton of touchdowns. And also what the Packers did in terms of drafting like AJ Dillon and the draft capital they used in order to acquire him. Like, while again, rookie running back might take some time to come on, and also all this other stuff, but it looks like they're indicating to us as the fantasy community that they're not really ready to give not Kenny Drake. They're not ready to give Aaron Jones the rock. But to me, at least, it looks like the Cardinals are, I guess, indicating to, at least to me, that they're ready to give Kenyon Drake that load. I mean, they didn't add much behind him. They haven't signed one of those notable free agents. Right. They have Chase Edmonds, and then they took Eno Benjamin, who profiles as a scat back. I mean, he might be able to do a little more than that, but I mean, that's essentially what he profiles as. So, I mean, Kenyon Drake, I mean, at 6'1", 210, I mean, he profiles as an RB1. His production over the last 6-7 starts that he had like last season for the Cardinals profiles as an RB1. I mean, he was involved in both the rushing and he had probably 5 to 6 targets per game. I mean, so we're looking at a guy that had on average, let's say 18 to 20 touches. So, I mean, what's not to like there? Regardless of offensive situation.
I hate when you start selling me. And
let me read it off. So in his first game, so what is it, that Thursday night game, or is it a Monday night game or whatever that they played against San Francisco, that first game that he played, 15 attempts, 4 targets. So that's 19 touches there. Okay. The next week, 17 touches. The week after that, 23 touches. The week after that, 18. The week after that, he had 14 touches. After that, 26. The week after that, 26. The final week, their last week, he had 13, but he got yanked.
But again, this was a team that, again, me, it's just still a team that didn't have anything to prove, could do what it wanted.
They had everything to prove.
Oh, they did not. They weren't.
No, they had everything to prove. No, it's not about playoffs. It's about the head coach and the fact that they had taken Josh Rosen with their first round pick the year beforehand, and they go right back to the well, and they get Kyler Murray. They had everything to prove.
That's the name I haven't heard. Where's Rosen at now? Didn't he go to Miami? So he's still at Miami?
Yep.
They got like 9 quarterbacks down there then, right?
Yeah, that offense had everything to prove this past season as to whether or not the Cliff Kingsbury experiment would work.
You sold me. Kenyon Drake, I'm going to take him first pick of the second round. That seems safer.
Well, that's fine.
Right. It's funny how pick 13 and 12.
112. 112 versus 201. Yeah, that changes everying.
but it's easier to tell somebody, I made a mistake. I should have never drafted him in the second, oh no, you got him in the second. That wasn't too bad. It's not the fact you got him.
That. I mean, so now that we're talking about it, so let's say you were to start your draft from the 12th spot with Kenyon Drake, and let's say Kenyon Drake and Tyreek Hill, because Devontae Adams is getting Devontae Adams and Michael Thomas normally like the first 2 wide receivers picked. Michael Thomas goes at like the 105, 106 spot.
Hopkins will be there. Julio Jones will be there. Tyreek Hill should be there. Unfortunately, in my league, Tyreek Hill, there's a couple owners in our league that just, they get wet with every Kansas City Chief. I think Tyreek Hill get picked maybe before pick 12, but which would be fine. That means somebody else will drop out. I mean, that's still we get to pick our spots.
That's right.
We have a random thing. I had the second pick. The guy who got the first pick picked the number 1 spot, and I picked the number 2 spot. This is the 12 spot. This is the 4th year in a row I've picked 12 and 13. And finally, after the show, somebody stayed on and was asking, "Why do you always take that spot?" And I said, "Well, now there's just me and you, or there's me and one other person. There's 3 of us chatting." I said, "Well, I just be real honest with you. This league, it's a competitive league, but there's a few people in our league that are questionable. You know what I'm saying? This is a home league. So there's always, every year, there's a couple people picked in the first round that probably shouldn't be, which means 2 first rounders fall to me at 12 and 13. And And I like starting that way. You know, I'd rather take that chance than hoping, than having Barkley or Zeke. I mean, I'd rather take a shot at 2 number 1 players than a number. I could have had this number 2 pick, but then I wouldn't pick again till number 22 or something like that.
Right. You got a long way to wait.
A long way. So, I just told him, I said, I'll be real honest. If I was in a real competitive league and everybody was equal players and I probably wouldn't get any cheap picks there, I'd probably would have taken number 2 and I'd go on with my life. But in this league, there's always 1 or 2 people that will pick, Cortland Sutton because they're a Denver fan. They'll pick them in the first round, and then who knows? Devontae Adams falls or something like that. Now, I'm not going to get a Michael Thomas or Kamara, or something like that. But I don't know. Like I said, I could start with but that was my point. I could also start with a DeAndre Hopkins and a Tyreek Hill. That's not a bad PPR start either. The problem is you really go all the way down. You go a long way before you're picking again at the end of round 3 to then start your running back.
I can't do Hopkins this year though, man.
Well,
you said you don't like Arizona, but yet you're going to take DeAndre Hopkins almost as if he's playing in Houston.
And that's because he is the one person that I told you earlier I'd have no Arizona people at all.
But you're going to take DeAndre Hopkins.
Nope, I'm starting to pay attention to a few things. I think he might be the difference, which is also my problem with Kenyon Drake. I think he's got something to prove now. And, their quarterback.
Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I think Murray is going to take a big step forward. So I'm actually on the Hopkins train a little bit, especially if you can get him in the second round. I don't know.
What does Hopkins have to prove? I mean, the man made.
No. I think what he has to prove is that it was him and that he can do it. He already proved he can do it with any quarterback. So now he can go there and prove it in another team, another system. I like those kind of guys. I like, we always know wide receivers have an attitude. And that attitude is they want to prove something, and they have no problem. Somebody like him, he has the ability to go back after a game where they only throw to him 9 times and say, that'll never happen again. Right, coach? And I think people will listen to him. So I think his problem was Bill O'Brien. I don't think it was a problem with Deshaun Watson. Well, I agree with that. I do. That's my point. I think this coaching staff isn't going to let him have 10 looks in a game. He's going to get 13, 14. He's going to get them all. I don't know. Back to my point. DeAndre Hopkins in the second round, I have no problem with. So, I don't know. We'll see. I'm excited. What my point is, that kind of got me excited to start paying attention now. The league started for us. We're picking our draft spots. We're able to start doing some mock drafting. Our keepers, we got, now I got to start looking at my keepers and seeing what I'm going to do there. I only really have 2 only 2, and they're even questionable. Damian Williams in the 6th. That's where he's being drafted. I'll take him. Well, I think a lot of people like him in the 6th, especially to get your season started. Yeah. So he would be a keeper for me in the 6th. And then the other keeper I have would be Darius Geis in the 11th. I don't think you can go wrong with Darius Geis in the 11th. Why not? Well, that's my point. So I would be starting my season with Geis, who should be healthy the first game. And I could be starting my season with Geis and Damian Williams as my 2 starting running backs. So that's another point. If I do that, do you go with a Adams, Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins? I'm not convinced that Julio Jones isn't out of the mix either in the second round. So could you start your draft and say, all right, I'm willing to take 2 running back or 2 wide receivers to start my season because I have a Damian Williams and a Darius Geis to get me at least started. And then I'll just work my, waiver wire or fab and draft a bunch of late round running backs and hope couple of those stick. I don't know.
I just did that in a best ball league where I started off at the 12. My 112 and 201 picks were Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill, and then I just figured it out later with Damian Williams. I think I got like Marlon Mack and like a couple other folks, just like guys that they'll get some carries,
Right.
and I think maybe Phillip Lindsay at some point, like later on down the line.
The other oddball thing, only because I did it last year, not this combination, but Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, that could be a 12 and 13 pick. I'm not a big fan of putting all my eggs in one basket, but those are two guys that pretty much, one of them should go off every other week,
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think there's enough. I think tight ends is a little crazier this year. I think you can wait quite a ways and still maybe get okay numbers this year.
You can, unless you're going to wind up spending up for like the big three. So the Kelce, Kittle,
Well,
Andrews.
that would be it, right? If I was going to do it, it would be Kelce. If I don't get, because Kittle's a keeper in our league, so he's not an option.
Andrews is probably going to be a keeper. I'd
So
assume.
yes.
So I'd rather just spend on. I mean, if I can wait for a guy like, let's say, Jared Cook, if I could get Tyler Higbee, if I could get, if you want to even go later, I mean, you can make the case for Jonnu Smith, Blake Jarwin, Ian Thomas.
And, there's multiple. That's my thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of happy, and I think this year there's going to be a few, tight ends that haven't done much that end up having good seasons that we weren't expecting. And I'm thinking in my head while I'm talking, and me, I struggle with that. Is it Ebron that went to Pittsburgh?
Yep. It'll be Ebron and Vance Dance.
Yeah, but see, I'm not worried about Dance. But I could see with Ben being back, Ben, we don't think of that. Ben throws a lot to those wide receivers, but when he's had good tight ends, he'll throw to them.
Yeah, Heath Miller. Come on.
And Ebron has proven he can catch a ball and score. So I'd have no problem Ebron late, and we'll go from there. Well, you mentioned best ball. Let's get into it a little bit because first of all, my first question is, you had two best ball strategy things on 4 for 4 as far as roster construction. One was for fan ball. One's fan ball, best ball, and one's FFPC best ball. What's the difference, and why are the strategies different? That was my first question. Let's go there.
So for fan ball, that's PPR, typically 20 rounds, quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end, defense. Like fairly standard for most,
like standard fantasy, more or less
fantasy. But for FFPC, different. First off, it's 28 rounds, so much deeper rosters. They also incorporate tight end premium scoring, so 1.5 PPR tight end, and they also add in kickers to their to best
I
ball.
love a good kicker.
Yeah. So the strategy is much different because now you have extra positions. You're going deeper into rosters. The tight end premium pushes tight ends up. So there's just a different strategy that you can use in order to draft at FFPC.
All right. So the strategies then vary greatly or very later on in the draft, meaning are the first 5 or 6 rounds pretty much the same type strategy, or is it just like you're saying, it's the roster construction altogether, so you got to consider that right from the get-go?
To be honest, I saw a lot of the same trends at the very top level. So like the most profitable roster constructions, we're really looking at investing in maybe, let's say in the first 6 rounds, you're looking at maybe getting a couple of running backs, a few wide receivers, and maybe one tight end. And that was for fan ball. But for FFPC, because of the tight end premium scoring, I mean, you would definitely need to invest in at least one tight end within the first 6 rounds. So you are talking about investing in, I would say it doesn't have to be Kelce, Kittle, or Ertz, but it could have been an Evan Ingram. It could have been a Hunter Henry, one of those guys that's in, let's say, the
proven winning strategy that you have to with. So it is proven that in the tight end,
for tight end premium,
heavy scoring tight end premium, because in tight end premium, there's some of the things I've read in regular season that the premium, whenever you put a premium on a category, every tight end gets that premium, so it doesn't change it that much. But you're saying in best ball it does. Now, is that partly because the best ball, one of those tight ends can be, can obviously become your flex player and all that also, right? I mean, is that
right? Because you're talking about the total number, because it's tight end premium for all tight ends, yes, but the delta, or like the gap between like those top three guys. So those guys, so the Kelsey, Kittle, and let's say Andrews, they're getting 80, 90, 100 targets. But like, if you drop it back down to, let's go even past the next tier, like past like, let's say Jared Cook and like some of those guys. So you're talking about Jonnu Smith, you're talking about Blake Jarwin and all that. Their top end range of outcomes is probably 50, 60, 70 targets. So that gap, if you multiply that out like over like throughout the entire season of at least like 3, 4, 5 target gap like per game, and then now you're also compounding that by the tight end premium scoring, that creates an advantage that you're just not going to be able to make up unless you invest like earlier at the position. And again, I'm not saying you have to grab a tight end within the first couple of rounds, but in the early portions of the draft.
Right, because my argument to that is in not best ball, but when people give me this argument in regular season fantasy where they have a premium on tight ends, they never rationalize in, though, the points you would have got from the guy you would have drafted in the third round. Meaning, yes, I get it. When you're comparing tight ends to tight ends, that made sense. But you're not you're not comparing who else could you have drafted instead of that tight end that would have got you 100, catches or whatever, and then a tight end later would have got you 60.
Right, exactly. Because the opportunity cost in the first like few rounds is massive. So then you have to think about like, well, because of the tight end premium scoring, Travis Kelce does compare quite favorably to a wide receiver one at his cost.
Well, and him and Kittle last year both did in regular scoring.
Exactly. So the tight end premium gives them that advantage. But that's not the same for maybe Evan Ingram, maybe Hunter Henry. You can maybe push them up there and at least say that could possibly happen. But that's not the same. That's not the same case for the rest of those guys. Like for Hayden Hurst, like any of the other popular tight ends that are like the popular late round tight ends, those guys don't have that range of outcomes. So really it doesn't help you in order to just say, well, I'm just going to wait until the 8th, 9th, 10th round, grab 3 of those popular late round tight ends and see if I can cobble together a good season, where I'm just going to go ahead and draft Travis Kelce and then I'll just mash the rest of my league because I've got a guy that's going to get 100 targets plus 7, 8, 9 touchdowns and just completely maul the league.
The reason I agree with that concept also is your starting lineup has more running backs and wide receivers in it. So it's more likely in a best ball, I would think, in a big roster, that if you've got 5 wide receivers sitting on your bench, 1 or 2 of them may go off. But when we're talking tight ends, you can only start 1 tight end, and then 1 would start in a flex spot, I guess, if he scores enough points. Yep. So it's less likely that you'll hit on somebody else tight end wise. So if you start a premium one and then a bunch of wide receivers, you're more likely to get the points you need, I would assume. So I would agree with that. So you have to start watching early. For your construction would be, okay, when did the first top 2 guys go? It's
Travis Kelce,
right? Kelce, Kittle,
Travis Kelce. Just to give you an idea, because I actually have a best ball draft pulled up right now because I'm on the clock. So in a FFPC draft him in right now, tight end premium scoring, Travis Kelce went at the 106. George Kittle went at the 207. Mark Andrews went at the 301. So that's, the first 3 off the board within the first.
Now, are the rest? Is it what? Ertz, Waller, Henry. Is that your next grouping?
Yep. Ertz went at 310.
Okay.
Darren Waller went at 504. Evan Ingram went at 506.
Where's Gronk going right now?
Gronk went as the tight end. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, 12. That's about
top 10.
Yeah, I think he's like tight end 12 here in the 8th round.
See, I would. Is this an expert draft?
Let's say half of the folks in
Because
here
I think
are
at home
4 for
in home
4.
leagues he's going to go higher than that. Home
Oh,
leagues,
yeah.
that name still means something.
In the so I just did like you saw me, like I don't know if you saw me tweeting about it, like was it this past Friday, but I was in a 350 high stakes best ball league with like a bunch of experts.
Drop
like
those names, we need them.
Guys for well, let's see who was in it. So it was called the Roto World Rumble,
right?
So let's see who are all the owners that are in it. So it was Ryan.
We don't need all 300.
Well, yeah. So Al Smith, Al Zeidenfeld, Ian Harditz from Roto World, John Daigle also from Roto World, Davis Maddock, and Michael Leone, Nelson Souza. He's a high stakes guy that he does a lot of work with Evan Silva, Joe Payno, Connor Allen. Those are my colleagues over at 4 for 4. Pete Davidson from Rotobond. He does some work with over with the New England media.
Now, did they have the tight end premium there?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so that was a best ball draft.
It is not this is for the Football Guys Championship. Okay. So this will be a like a head-to-head league that will be setting rosters and doing like fab over the coming season.
But they still have the tight end premium in that league also.
So in this, Rob Gronkowski was taken as the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tight end 10 in the 7th round.
7th round. See, I mean, I think if I'm drafting, I'm set up well. If he's there in the 8th, 9th, I might take a chance there. But again, I think in home leagues he's going to go. I think he's going to go probably Waller area. I'll be, Hunter Henry, and then maybe like a Gronk. Because a lot of home leagues, they don't know the Higbee. They don't know, they don't even know what team Jared Cook's on half the time or what's Hooper doing, So, we'll see. Where if they go, I need a tight end and Gronk is on my list right now, I'll take him, or he's close and I know the name. So,
yeah.
All right. So, to build your roster properly, you need to know your scoring, which we would tell you that in any league, whatever you're playing, you got to know your scoring. So roster construction, if there's the premium on tight ends, obviously you're looking there early. What about in best ball? Where do quarterbacks and their value fall in best ball? Is that similar to regular fantasy where they're not, you don't draft them high because they all do about the same? Or is it a little different? You're trying to get a couple because you want the points out of 2 good quarterbacks.
Just looking at the way that the market is, valuing quarterbacks right now, really, and I've seen JJ Zacharisa talk about this right now, it's really not like the late round strategy is not as viable as it's been in years past. It's more about like the middle round quarterback is where you want to aim at, because you still got a ton of not a ton of guys, but you still got quite a few that are going in the early rounds. Like Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, they're going Lamar Jackson's going in either in the 2nd or 3rd round. Like right off the rip. Right. Patrick Mahomes, like shortly after that in the 3rd, 4th round. You still got Deshaun Watson, you still got Russell Wilson, you still got Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Josh Allen. There's like 7 or 8 quarterbacks that are typically taken within the first 6 to 7 rounds. But then after that, that's where you typically find most of your value, because that's where guys like you can make a case for Carson Wentz, who's one of my dark horse favorites to be like one of the better quarterbacks of 2020. Still got Matt Ryan there, like Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers is even being taken as like the QB 15, if I'm not mistaken. Matt Stafford is there. A lot of those like mid-range guys that definitely have the upside on a week-to-week standpoint to be the QB1. And then after that, you still have some value guys, but they still have their warts, like Daniel Jones, Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins. You can squint and say that Teddy Bridgewater has a chance to break into that.
Now in fan ball or FFPC, or either one of those 2 quarterback leagues, or both of them is all best ball
single
2 quarterback. They're all
at least most of the formats that I play in are all single quarterback leagues. FFPC does offer a super flex version of best ball if you want to get into that. I just typically stick to 1 QB.
A 1 QB. And then a 1 QB. So both of these are 1 QB. So what is your strategy this year? 2 quarterbacks, 3 quarterbacks, or does that depend on how early you get one?
So for FFPC, because of the number of rounds that we're drafting, I typically go with a 3 quarterback strategy, just because I want to be able to incorporate as much depth into running back and wide receiver as possible. So not to leave myself completely out, even if I do wind up drafting a quarterback within the first, let's say 8 rounds. So if I get a Russell Wilson, a Josh Allen, like whatever, insert here, I don't want to completely just leave myself with some fragility at the position, because even if I just draft 2, well, what if one gets hurt by injuries, like the offense trails off? So I typically draft 3 just because of the number of rounds. But for fan ball, since it's only 20 rounds, I typically just go 2 quarterbacks, with it just being a shorter draft.
I got you. And it's some shorter roster, right? So, and then do you pay attention? Obviously, you need to make sure that they don't have the same bye week, or is that something you don't worry about? You just
bye weeks for sure. Yeah, so I do not want to take a 0.
Okay, you don't want to take that 0, even if the 2 quarterbacks win you all the other weeks, meaning it.
Right.
Okay, so the right
we don't know. I mean,
I got that.
Yeah.
So, but also I've been where the tiers, you're getting the last guy in one tier and then the next guy in the next tier. And you're like, all right, I'd rather have the 2, do you drop, how far down do you drop to get somebody that doesn't have the same buy? But, because, again, you don't want to take the 0, and is best ball all head to head? Is it head to head or total points?
Points.
Can it be both? So it's total points for the end of the season, or total points. It's not a weekly scoring then. It's just at the end of the season who had the most points. Period.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're taking a 0 there, you're giving up maybe 40 or 50 points. Well, it depends. The quarterback, 20 points, depends on the scoring, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A good quarterback week, an average quarterback week in most scoring is about 20 points. That seems to be an average. So you could be negative. You're giving up a 0 there, so you're losing 20 points for the whole season. But if you have the right 2 quarterbacks, you don't think you can make that up, even if they had the same bye week?
But do you know that you're drafting the right 2 quarterbacks?
Well, you never know.
That's where I'd rather just. I don't think that I know better, so I'd rather just try and insulate myself as much as possible from risk.
All right, I'd have to really look down at the quarterbacks and go, come on, wouldn't you rather have these 2 guys that have the same buy than this guy? I would,
but it's just, the same way. Because
you just said we're only talking 20 points. So you think 20 points means that much?
Oh, yeah. When you look at like end of year standings, 20 points can be the difference.
You're the guy who wrote the article, so I'm just the guy who's cynical and
I'm telling you.
I know, and that's my job, just to question you, because I probably wouldn't do it either, but I would just, again, I would just, unfortunately the list I have here, quarterbacks, doesn't give me their bye. Oh, it does. Their bye weeks. So you would not want Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray if it worked out that way, because they both have the same bye week. You'd rather have Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. They have 2 different.
For 2 reasons. 1, because of the bye week thing, and also 2, because of opportunity cost. Lamar Jackson, at his cost, he has the potential to outkick his ADP, even where he's drafted right now. So
Lamar
that's
Jackson
okay.
was probably the wrong person.
But Kyler Murray, now you're spending both a second or third round pick plus a 5th or 6th round pick in order to get 2 quarterbacks. Where you're really going to wind up being hurt at the running back and wide receiver position. So I couldn't advocate for that.
Now I look at it, week 10's a bad week, because week 10 you have Ryan, Prescott, and Mahomes all on a bye. And actually they're pretty spread out. Obviously week 8 is Murray and Jackson and Watson. That's week 8's not very good for quarterbacks, but most of them are pretty spread out, to be real honest. So, okay. All right. So tight ends, quarterback. Then when you're talking wide receivers and running backs, I would assume we talked last week. You're still early on. You're just looking to get the best guys. But once the first 4 or 5 rounds go, then at those spots, where are you in your mind going, this is best ball? I need to consider that instead of this guy. I need to go, what is there a better best ball option here? And then maybe if you can give me a couple players' names, in the 7th, 8th round.
So that's where it's not necessarily about a specific player, but it's about roster construction at that point. Like I normally don't walk in with a strategy. I normally just let maybe the first like 6 or 7 rounds kind of play out, and then I'll take stock of where I'm at and start to fill out.
So the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th round, you're looking at what you already have, and then
so let's say, for instance, like in the draft that I was just talking about, like where I started off with, I'll pull it up just so y'all can you can laugh at me or think that I'm just a freaking genius. Like for what I think
I think you're the
no,
genius.
you're just gonna ridicule me. I already know. So let's see. So I started off at the 12th position with Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill.
Okay. Which you told me that.
Right. And so like I leaned into the fact that I was going to wind up with 2 very good wide receivers.
Right.
And
so I'm thinking that way too in my home league. I'm thinking just go with top 2 wide receivers and
right. So at the 3-4 turn when it came back to me, there was another good receiver, at least to me, a good receiver.
Okay.
Because I still had
I probably agree with you.
I went with Amari Cooper at the 312.
Okay, I have no problem with that either. In a mock draft I did today, I exactly started out with those three wide receivers.
And then recognizing the fact that I've now invested so much draft capital into the wide receiver position, I switched back and at least tried to look at the running back position. So in the 4th round, I took Melvin Gordon.
Okay. Now, can I tell you, in my mock draft today, in my 4th pick, I took Juju Schuster. I committed in that mock draft 100% going. Well, one, we start 3 wide receivers, and there's a flex spot. So I'm like, you know what? If I'm going to punt, the running back at this point, I might as well have 4 wide receivers that to me are all 4 can win you a week.
Yeah.
And again, and I do that when I'm mocking, obviously that's the part of mocking. I know a lot of people who I used to, when me and you started early on, I would do mock drafts without much thought, just like repetition, draft, just, and some of that I think is good because you just learn names. You're just learning names and about where they fall.
Yeah.
I now mock draft a little less frequently, but I mock draft with more reason, meaning I'm really trying to look and see how I'll go 4 or 5 rounds and then I'll click the backup button and switch 1 or 2 people out to see how it affects 2 picks later. I actually now dissect. Now dissect. I still don't think I can dissect. Never mind. We all know I'm not the smart guy here. That's your job. But my point is, when I did that, my team didn't turn out terrible. Obviously, I started out with those 4, and then I just went running back, because now I'm just hoping to hit, and then Golden Tate, I think, was my 5th wide receiver way down the board. Right. I was like, but all right. So we're on the same page there. So you went, who'd you go with? Who was your pick for running back?
So I got Melvin Gordon, and then after that, I followed up Melvin Gordon with Marlon Mack, Damian Williams. I got Duke Johnson later. I wound up getting Adrian Peterson and Carlos Hyde. So just
all of those are names in my mock draft today that were there. Those were all names I had to consider. Yeah. When you start with 4 wide receivers or 3 even, those are the names you're going to, actually, I think also a few things you're still falling there. In the 5th round where you could Singletary and
some of those guys are still there.
And who else? Who's the running back for the Bears?
David Montgomery.
He's been there in that 5th round area.
Yep, he went in the Singletary went in the 4th. Well, Singletary and David Montgomery went in the 4th. Okay, so I couldn't get him there at the back end of the 5th.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just but let's say if I had flipped it around, because there's somebody else in the league, so they went like Kenyon Drake, Nick Chubb, and then David Johnson. So if you were to stack running backs in the first few picks, well then now you start to pivot and then you want to look at wide receivers.
And then obviously at that point, you're going to be falling down to now that you're looking at way down there, you're looking at the
Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen, T.Y. Hilton, Tyler Lockett, A.J.
Yeah.
Green, Jarvis Landry,
Keenan Allen. Why
Terry
is Keenan Allen
McLaurin.
fallen so far? What have I lost in a season off? What happened to Keenan Allen? Is it the loss of the quarterback? Was Rivers?
Yeah, it's no Phillip Rivers. I mean, now it's either Tyrod Taylor, Justin Herbert.
I know, but I don't know.
I'm not
Allen
saying it's right. Just saying
I know
that's the narrative.
Okay.
And
I think
old.
I hate when we're on the same page. But okay. So in the draft there, then when did you start having to think about the tight end then?
I wound up taking Tyler Higbee at the back end of the 5th. I took Tyler Higbee at tight end 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 at tight end 8.
See, I think Higbee in home leagues you're going to be able to get late. He's one of those people I have on my in my head here that okay. It's almost like, grab him and, I think I don't always take 2 tight ends, but late in the draft, I had no problem taking 2, knowing I'll punt one early if something happens. But I agree. I think he's got all the talent.
Yeah, he's in a good situation.
And I like Ebron. Like I've said, if it even go even farther, you get Ebron maybe. But
sure.
All right. So 5th, then you went tight end, and then did you come back more running backs to help strengthen that, or did you go wide receiver?
I didn't grab another wide receiver until the 11th round.
Okay. Well, then you go. So you did like I did. Once you committed to starting with wide receiver, heavy.
I started filling out running back, and because of the tight end premium, I focused on tight end for a little bit. I saw value at quarterback, so I grabbed Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers.
Now, at some point, though, that's where you get hurt. Now, if you start with a real strong, wide receiver core, and just one of those gets hurt, you obviously still have to pick up a few wide receivers late that you think are gonna, now you're looking for what I call best ball wide receivers, the guys who can get you the 2 touchdowns and 100 in 4 games of the season, but they don't have the stats to become a regular fantasy player. Those kind of guys, right?
Yep, I got so I wound up picking up Curtis Samuel lake because I see the upside there, right. So I grabbed him. Sterling Shepard, same thing. While he might not have the big massive blow up games, I still think he has enough potential within that offense.
Emmanuel Sanders going too high for that kind of a pick? What do you think of Sanders? Okay, so he's going.
I'm conflicted with Emmanuel Sanders, especially because the amount of time he's going to have in order to integrate himself into the New Orleans offense.
I just think he's a machine. I think he can catch. He's going to be fine.
But at least my thought is he's going to wind up. He's not going to hit until later on in the season. I think Drew Brees is going to wind up going with his guys, the guys that he trusts. It's going to be Michael Thomas. It's going to be Jared Cook. It's going to be Alvin Kamara. Emmanuel Sanders is either going to be the 3rd or 4th target on that offense, and we really won't see a good game from him until middle of the season.
All right, but if Michael Thomas goes down, he's an animal. I mean, I know
if he goes down, then that whole offense is screwed.
Okay, but my point is, when I think of in the past, when I think best ball, though, I kind of think that I go, okay, here's a guy I like on his own at this spot, but if something happens to this guy up here, he goes way up. So to me, that gives me in my mind, that gives me more value than the guy that's just okay. Even if someone gets hurt, he's not going to do anything more. It doesn't change anything. So that's kind of where what I like about him. And I in fact, I even mentioned Golden Tate. I still think there's a chance Golden Tate could be the number 1 wide receiver at the end of the season for the Giants.
It's possible.
I mean, I get it. I'm just saying there's a lot of things moving there. There's some, I know there's some,
I still have to figure out how he couldn't carve out a role for himself on Philadelphia when most of their receivers went down. That's a thing that's still it still sticks in my brain that Golden Tate, but they were still passing a lot. I mean, it was still on a good team that passed quite a bit. So you mean to tell me that he couldn't connect? He can connect with Carson Wentz, but he can connect with Daniel Jones.
Philadelphia's never been a big slot to throw in. I mean, they've always thrown to the tight ends in the middle. They don't,
But that's the interior part of the field. So,
but that's my point. They're throwing their tight ends instead of Golden Tate.
Well, then if you can't beat out Zach Ertz and then Dallas Goedert with coming on too, then I don't know.
I don't know. We'll see. All right. So now we're done here pretty much because we're going to do more best ball next week. And somebody had to talk NASCAR. We only got 4 to go, 4 laps to go. I'm just trying to look up. Bubba not in the top 10. So he's not going to finish in the top 10. It doesn't look like. Oh, we have a wreck, though. We have a wreck with 5 to go. So,
oh, boy.
There will be a little bit of stoppage here, so maybe we'll get to end this in time where I can go watch the green white checker.
Okay,
but now I'm just curious. Now, in the one league, where does the kicker strategy go? When do you, if you had to pick kicker in best ball, do you take 2 kickers? Do you take 1 kicker and you give up a 0 that week?
I take 3 kickers.
3 kickers.
Heck yeah.
Holy God. Are there, if everybody takes 3 kickers, are there enough?
I mean you're digging deep. Some people just take 2.
Kickers can have big weeks.
They can.
A kicker can get you 20 points.
But I mean, the guys like Harrison Butker, the Chiefs kicker, and like Justin Tucker. I mean, those guys go early. I'm not taking those guys. I'll take who is it? Younghoe Koo, Atlanta's kicker.
I like him. Yeah, and I think Atlanta's going to score. You want an offense that scores a lot.
Yeah, you want an offense that's going to get into scoring range, not necessarily score. Right. That's why I like guys like Joey Sly, Carolina's kicker, because I think that offense should still be able to move.
Yeah,
right. They at least get within kicker range. So guys like Cincinnati's kicker?
I couldn't tell you who it is anymore.
Who is it? I thought it was Randy. What is his name?
I would be lying if I have no clue.
Bullock. Randy Bullock.
Okay, yeah, that is him. He actually has a leg.
Yeah. So I mean, guys like him that are just play on these offenses. It doesn't always have to be like the Dallas Cowboys, New Orleans Saints, that kicker.
There's a lot of people think the Bengals are going to move the ball. Yeah. They're not going to be able to stop the other team, but they are going to move the ball with that offense.
Based on where we're drafting Joe Mixon, Tyler Boyd, AJ Green, all the rest of those guys, you better believe they better be able to move the ball.
Right. All right. I was just curious where the kicker aspect goes in all this. Then next week, we'll start right away with best ball because next week I'll share my screen and we'll actually go in and maybe either do a mock best ball draft. I think I have the ability to do that, or we'll do something where we're actually picking and doing some things and talking it through as we go. Okay. And then, following week, hopefully, I got to hit Lou up again. And hopefully in a couple of weeks, we can get a draft together 2 or 3 weeks down the road and, actually have a live draft and talk about it a little bit on the show and then go from there. So we'll get that in the works. Chris, again, thank everybody for coming and listening to us again. I know it's off season, but we're getting close now. So people will start listening again. And they'll start reading articles. What do you got going on? Where are you at? What do you got out there currently?
I just did my first of the fantasy debate series. It was me and my editor over at 444, Jen Eakins. We did a debate against Mark Andrews versus Zach Ertz. I was arguing for Zach Ertz because Mark Andrews is like the new toy, but also I picked him specifically because I was also a believer in Andrews, but I wanted to at least do the research into if Ertz has any claim to at least being valued more than Mark Andrews. I found some good stats that support his case, but I do agree. But I am ultimately, I think I go with Andrews just because I'm a fan of the Ravens and how they run their offense. But if you still believe in Zach Ertz, I mean, I totally understand why. I mean, there's plenty of data to support him still being a good tight end in 2020. And also, to be quite honest, he could probably play for at least another 3 seasons if he wants.
And especially in PPR. I mean, they do throw him the ball in most. I mean, most of the time he gets. The key to tight end, you want tight ends going to score some touchdowns, but if they're not going to score touchdowns, you they're going to get 7 or 8 passes, going their way. So, all right. So that's good. Anything else going on in the near future?
Actually, a lot of I've got some more weather research that's coming up.
Okay.
I've got some more player profiles that'll be coming up, and then that'll pretty much close out my June.
You got to go for 4. That's the number. then FOR.com. Read Chris's articles. Join. I've joined the site now, so I can read the other people's articles too, and I don't have to just read the first paragraph.
Yeah.
I can read the whole articles, and it's good stuff. I enjoy it, and for multiple reasons. Guys that listen to us, I know a lot of people get stuck on the ESPN. Well, get out there and read other articles, and you'll learn more. You'll be a better player if you read more, off the grid type stuff. And not that 444's off the grid; they're one of the top sites. So, get out there and read their stuff, and learn something. That's what fantasy is all about. Learn something. Yeah. And I hope this isn't the year I learn how to be a loser, because I'm good. I'm always at the top, and I'm going to keep it that way. And that's because I think outside the box, Chris. All right. Thanks for joining us tonight. We will see you again next Wednesday, where we won't talk NASCAR unless something happens. But other than that, that won't be our goal. We're going to get right into football. So there's no fast forward buttons. You'll just best ball.
Let's do it.
And then we'll try to, I'm pretty sure I can do us a best ball mock draft so that we're ready for our real draft a couple weeks later. So, you know what? So, Chris, just say goodnight.
Good night.
This has been Just a Fantasy Fan podcast. And to keep your fantasies going, follow us at justafantasyfan.com. Say goodnight. Good night.